Tuesday, and we are here with another Hack Your Sagebrush video. This week we're going to talk about inserting something other than a ruffle into that front bodice piece. And so I've got some things set up already for us. And if this goes smoothly, I will also show us French seaming today. So I'm going to jump right in. I've got my computer set up in the back so I can watch for comments. So if I turn away, it's just because I'm making sure nobody is saying anything that needs attention. So you can see I've got my top bodice piece here all laid out. What I've done is I've marked my seam allowance. So if I take my seam gauge 5/8 inch, you can see that I've marked it all along here, not super accurately apparently in places. And why I've done this is that if you look at my very fancy trim, if I were to sew 5/8 of an inch in, I would lose a lot of this motif. Oh, let's turn that off. Can I turn that off? I can turn that off. There we go. Sorry, forgot to turn off the notifications. Anyways, so you can see if I were to sew 5/8 of an inch into this piece, I would lose a lot of the motif. So I want to make sure that I'm only going to be sewing into that little piece. So, and because this is fairly bulky as well, I don't want to put it into my side seams. Oh, and I'm going to do this. There we go. I don't want to put it too deep into my side seams, so I've marked my side seams as well. So I'm going to just place it like just on the other side of this line. Because you want to catch, sorry, I put a pin in my mouth. Don't put pins in your mouth. It's a really bad habit and you should not do it. Do as I say, not as I do. Yes, so you want to make sure that you are catching enough of this trim that it's not going to fall off, and at the same time you don't want too much of it to be sewn away. So and anyone who has watched a video with me before knows that I'm like, you can just skip the basting. And I am telling you this time, you do not want to skip the basting with this. It is too finicky and fiddly. We are going to baste this piece into place. There we go. And what this will allow us to do as well is, after we've sewn our pieces together, if we decide, you know what, I'm not super happy with it, I want to take it out and reposition it, then you can do that. And we want to make sure that your trim is pointing up towards your neckline, because what's going to happen once we sew it is that this seam is going to go like this and flip down. So, and you know, if you had a wider trim, you could absolutely just pop it in there like that. But this one, you would lose too much. So here I go. Pin, 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 pin. You guys don't get to really see my new fancy sewing machine that I bought just before Christmas. It's beautiful. It sews lovely. Very happy with it. It's a Pfaff Ambition 620 for anyone that wants to know. It's the same machine Michelle has. Michelle may have pressured me a little bit into buying it. I'm okay with that. Okay, so you see I've got this set up. I'm going to set my stitch to a longer length because if I do need to pick this out, I want to make it easy on myself. And I'm going to just go baste along that edge there. So we shall do that. And when you are basting, so basting stitch is holding something in place. It takes the place of pins. You can hand baste, you can glue baste, you can pin baste. But what this is allowing us to do is it's a stitch that can come out afterwards. So it's just keeping, it's a way to tack something into place, to keep it into place. It's so quiet. Let me know while I'm waiting for those who are watching. Let me know how far have you gotten in your project? Have you done the sleeve reduction? Are you deciding to make a dress version? What's going on there? Let me know. Have you not started at all yet? Are you still picking out fabric? Okay, so there is my piece. I'm now going to take that bottom bodice part, and this needs to be gathered between the two notches. So because I've got the basting stitch, it's the perfect time. So I'm going to run. Here is where you can cheat. It says to run 2 lines of gathering stitches. I only ever just run 1. I am never gathering something that needs so much precision that I need to run 2 lines of basting stitches or gathering stitches. Okay, leave myself some long tails. So, and look at it, sort of already gathered it a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to match the raw edges, right sides together. I like to find the center point on the bodice and match it to the center point on or the bottom bodice, I guess, to the top part. I stuck a pin in my mouth again. I should not do that. Just fold it in half. It doesn't have to be super precise. But what it lets me do is sort of gather evenly between the 2 sides. So we're gonna do that, and you can see I need to gather a little bit more there. And gather, gather, gather. That works nicely. A couple of quick pins. This is working. Any comments so far? No one has said anything. Tell me how your night's going. Tell me what you ate for dinner. Tell me something. If you're watching this the next day, tell me what you're doing today. Are you at work? Are you or in the future? I guess I have to address future people too. How did you find us? How did this video come up in search? Let us know. Yes, so there we go. So you can see that okay, so that is ready for me to sew. So I'm going to make sure that my machine is not doing a basting stitch this time. And I'm going to sew this together, and then we're going to see if my trim insertion worked. And the pattern calls for a check the pattern, the seam allowance in the pattern. And what you can do, which I have not done, is you could actually baste this together to begin with, and that'll allow you to adjust easily if you need to pull things out. I should have done that. I did not do that. We're just going to go for broke. So some other trim ideas, you can put pom-poms. If you crocheted, you could crochet a little piece of lace. Okay. And the moment of truth. So we flip this up and look at that. That's pretty darn good. Oh, that looks really, really great. I didn't think that was going to look as good as it does, and I'm very, very happy with how that looks. Just a little bit here, and you want to make sure that you get it far enough over because the side seam is going to catch this, and then make sure that it doesn't fray or anything. So or look like this raw edge here kind of looks a little ugly. I'll bring it a little closer. Can see if you can see that. So very, very happy with this. No need for me. It's a little shifty there, but I don't care. I'm not that particular. So after this, you would iron and then top stitch your finish this seam and top stitch it. I don't have my serger on the table right now. I will serge this seam and then top stitch it down. But in the meantime, so what I will show next is how to do a French seam. Very, very simple. We're going to do it with the shoulders on this piece. So I've got my back bodice piece ready. What we're going to do, so normally when you sew seams on garments, you sew with your right sides together because that means that your seams are contained inside the garment. To sew a French seam, you are sewing twice, and we're going to start by sewing the wrong sides together using a smaller seam allowance than what the pattern calls for. What we do is divide the seam allowance. It's not equally in half. On a 5/8 inch seam allowance, you start by sewing a 3/8 of an inch seam, and then you will sew a 1/4 inch seam. So for everyone doing relative math, a 1/4 inch is 2/8. 2 plus 3 is 5. That's where we get our 5/8. I will say that again. So we divide a 5/8 inch seam into a 3/8 inch seam and a 2/8 inch seam, which when we reduce the fraction is a 1/4 inch seam. And that's where we get our 5/8 inch seam. So I'm going to start by sewing my shoulders together. With a 3/8 inch seam. I will just do the one to start here. So you can see that I've started that seam, and then I'm going to trim this seam allowance down to 1/8 of an inch. So very close to the seam allowance. Normally what I would do here is iron, but my iron is not set up for pictures right now. So I'll open this up. I would iron. I'm going to get my my lovely clapper here. And I'll use that to open up the seam, because when you open this seam, then it gives you a nice crisp line to fold on, because then we're going to sew again with right sides together. So French seam, you start by sewing wrong sides together and then right sides together. And this is not going to let me open it. There we go. I just want to get it a little flat. Or else it doesn't go as nicely. Then we turn it around. Usually if you've ironed it, you don't need to pin it. It'll stay. It is really important that you trim well. If you don't trim well, what will happen when you sew your second seam is that you will end up seeing that first, the raw edges from that first seam. So there we go. I'm going to turn it around. Now we sew with a 1/4 inch. Oops, I had backstitch still on. And you can see, ta-da, and it's nicely enclosed, especially when working with a light, delicate fabric, like a rayon, or if you were working with like a silk or cotton voile, something light, some linens. Doing a French seam is less heavy than finishing with a serged seam or a zigzag seam. And it means that the delicate fabric is not going to unravel at all or fray. So that is how you do French seams. I wouldn't recommend doing a French seam in here because it's going to be a little bit bulky with the gathers. But definitely on the shoulders, and I'll show you on the sides would be another good spot to do one. So there it is. That is our finished bodice piece so far. You can see mine is short because I'm going to turn mine into a dress. We're going to see if I've accurately cut the piece the way I want it to. And you know what? I picked this fabric up for 50% off. I bought 3 meters, so I've got lots to play around with, lots to make mistakes on. And if I throw, a skirt on it and decide that I absolutely hate it, it's not the end of the world. And I can easily change to something else because I have enough fabric. So definitely playing around is sort of like a working muslin on this pattern. Let me know if you've got any questions about this. Next week, what we're going to do is finish our neckline with bias tape, and then I'm going to show you, instead of finishing this with a tie closure, we're going to put a button and a thread chain. So that's it for tonight. Great to see. Thanks for watching. And if you do have any comments, please leave them in the chat below. We'll make sure to answer them. And don't miss a video by us. Make sure you like and subscribe and to get notifications that when we go live. Awesome. Have a wonderful evening, everybody. Bye.